Marvel's Wolverine Associate Narrative Director Mary Kenney says every lever must be pulled to push disordered LGBTQ+ agenda. Nope. How about making worthwhile characters because you can and they just so happen to be gay? I know, I'm speaking way outside of the box, but that's the way it goes. Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to the GNRO Minicast. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drak. I hope everybody's having an awesome day or night when you're listening to this. And once again, we have another awesome story brought to us by John F. Trent and That Park Place. And this is going to be covering the Sweet Baby Inc. Defender. I'm not sure if she's an employee or not, but she is working actively, or was working actively, on Marvel's Wolverine. For those who don't know, that is the Insomniac developed Wolverine that has had a bit of controversy ever since the Spider-Man 2 ending happened, and also because of all of the Sweet Baby Inc. nonsense. So, let's go ahead and see how this Associate Narrative Director handles herself. Associate Narrative Director at Insomniac Games, who is working on the upcoming Marvel's Wolverine game, Mary Kenney, declared that every lever must be pulled in order to push a disordered LGBTQ+ agenda, and no, it shouldn't. Speaking with Dual Shockers about a recent GLAAD report, because GLAAD is so accurate, right? We love their report cards. Bemoaning the lack of LGBTQ+ characters in video games, Kenney described the report as heartbreaking. I'm sure it was to you. She also stated the GLAAD report tells us something key. Games are a way for LGBTQ people to socialize. No, they are one way. You can also just socialize. But it also tells us something heartbreaking, that LGBTQ gamers don't feel that developers are thinking of them when they design games. Or maybe they are. You just aren't playing the games where they're actually thinking about it. Or they're actually trying to put effort into gay characters. But we can't have that. Every box must be checked in every game, hence why Wolverine is already looking to have a bad launch when it comes out. Yeah, Mary Kenney, your way of doing things is just so great. Kenney added, there are so many LGBTQ developers. I'm sure there are, and maybe some of them don't necessarily agree with you. And we want what players want. Obviously not, otherwise the gaming industry wouldn't be in the shithole it is. To design experiences that tell the player, we're here, we're important, and we belong, and we're killing your game studios left and right because we're so pissed off you won't pay attention to us. That's how the sentence finished to me. In order to obtain this, she declared, we need to pull every lever we have. Characters, community, support, mechanics to make it so, including killing companies, which you're actively doing, by the way. During this whole Sweet Baby Inc. debacle, I've seen many companies, unfortunately, have to either lay off a bunch of people or shut their doors entirely. Yeah, your agenda is working out really well for people, so much so that it is forcing people into breadlines. Not actual breadlines, but you get my point. Since you want to speak in tons of hyperbole, I'll go ahead and do the same. This is the opposite of what video game developers should be doing. Instead of attempting to normalize and lead people to objectively disordered lifestyles, they should be promoting the common good. Whatever. The common good is defined... Okay, I was wondering if this was John or if this was supposed to be Mary, but alright. The common good is defined in the Catechism of the Catholic Church as the sum total of social conditions which allow people, either as groups or as individuals, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. I tend to be much more of a individual focus, but okay. In case you don't know this about me just yet, I'm not a pro-group or organization person. I believe in individuals. That's why I don't trust organizations like LGBTQ+ or Black Lives Matter or anything like that, because all they do is speak for their hive mind, not necessarily for the individuals they claim to be representing. So that's the way it is. Furthermore, Pope John Paul II detailed that the common good is not simply the sum total of particular interests, rather it involves an assessment and integration of those interests on the basis of a balanced hierarchy of values. Ultimately, it demands a correct understanding of the dignity and the rights of the person. Well thought out quote. I hadn't seen that in a while, but I do remember some of this. That's actually a really great quote to be able to put into this. I like it. Christopher Kaxer at Catholic.com explains, the common good, in other words, is not simply what people happen to want, but what would be authentically good for people. Sometimes that's the decision that would ultimately kill a presidency, kill a campaign, things like that. That in a lot of cases, like my ideal presidential candidate these days is the person that makes a decision like this and forever damns their presidency. Like, history will forever remember them as nothing more than a stick in the mud, but ultimately they did the right thing. And the only example that I have of it, I wasn't even part of, and that would probably be Calvin Coolidge, in the way that he handled things in the Great Depression. So, but what would be authentically good for people, the social condition, or actually another one, Abraham Lincoln, but, well, they're trying to for lack of a better term, they're trying to whitewash his history now, so I can't really use Abraham Lincoln anymore. How about George Washington? George Washington didn't want to be president. He just wanted to go live his life. That's the president that I want to elect. The common good, in other words, is not simply that people happen to want, but what would be authentically good for people, the social conditions that enable human flourishing. And that's ultimately what you should be going for. Not pulling every lever because, well, this is how you think you solve the problem. What Mary Kenney's solution is going to be is she wants to shove agenda down your throats to the point where you're never going to trust her with anything. And you're going to be so sick and tired of this agenda that you're going to become apathetic towards it. Not supportive of it, apathetic towards it. You don't care because all it does is remind you of all the times they're shoving things down your throat. So that's why it doesn't work. Promoting an LGBTQ agenda in video games is against the common good. The Catechism of the Catholic Church states, basing itself on sacred scripture, which prevents homosexual acts as acts of grave depravity, tradition has also declared that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. They are contrary to the natural law. They close the sexual act of the gift to the gift of life. They do not proceed from a genuine, effective, and sexual complementarity. Under no circumstances can they be approved. It's the way they look at it. That's one way of looking at things, I guess. I don't necessarily know if I tend to agree on a lot of this stuff. I do think that there are some good points in there, but ultimately it is the individual's choice on whether or not to partake in such acts, and as long as they are accountable when they face their Lord and Savior at the end of their lives, then I really don't care. If they aren't accountable and want to blame it on this, that, or the other, then I do have a problem. As for transgender ideology, Archbishop Sample recalled the conversation he had with Pope Francis. He said, "This is a direct assault on God himself. It's the ultimate rejection of God. That we don't need God, we don't need to accept God, we don't need to accept our individuality, we don't need to accept how God has made us, we just cast God aside, and I will define myself." There's a lot of truth in there, whether or not you like the religious speak, because most of these agendas, whether they be LGBTQ or BLM or any of those acronyms, are all about hive mind. All about, you are part of this demographic, you must act for the demographic, not for yourself. You must act for the demographic, and instead it encourages you to reject your own individuality. And as my buddy Brinton has pointed out on podcasts before, things are a case-by-case basis. Individuals have different problems. They just so happen to be associated with a particular group. But the group's idea of what to do right is always, put the group first. Screw yourself. Put the group first. Well, if I screw myself, then ultimately that can hurt the group, because then you would lose me as that person within your hive that is a functional worker. They don't care. They would just throw you away like any queen bee would throw away a bee that has gotten rid of its stinger or has lost its usefulness. So at that point, yeah, there's a lot of actual facts in there where you're basically supposed to embrace the hive mind and reject individuality, whereas a lot of the teachings of God are to embrace your own individuality. Funniest thing about that. He later added, this ideology that's in the culture today, now that there's no such thing as a binary gender, they're trying to override science itself, multiple genders that we can define, nobody's one or the other because it's all mental illness, we're just in this gender fluidity, so that young people growing up are indoctrinated into this ideology, which I'm 100% against, by the way. That it's way too cumbersome and confusing for a kid who's looking at the world and trying to learn it. It's way too complicated for them to take on, and this bullshit should not be getting taught to them in schools. They can figure it out when they hit their 20s. And this is what Pope Francis goes after. It's a terrible thing that's happening. It's no surprise that Kenney would want to promote these disordered lifestyles that under no circumstances can be improved, given she attempted to gaslight readers, oh, I'm not surprised by that, while defending Sweet Baby Inc. back in March. Oh boy. Now we get to get into this stuff. In a 12-post thread to Twitterman X, Kenney attempted to justify and defend Sweet Baby Inc.'s pushing of woke ideology into video games. She wrote, "Some of you don't seem to understand how narrative consulting on games work, but don't worry, I do. Yes, this is about Sweet Baby, because I've worked with that team, and they're one of the finest in the biz." Are they really? Because last I checked in Future News, yet another company had to shut their doors because they worked with them. Sweet Baby Inc. isn't a good company. It's not the finest in the biz. It's mob tactics in the gaming industry. If you don't know what I mean by that, just wait. I know some people in the comment section don't want to wait, but trust me, we'll get there. Kenney then shared a disingenuous breakdown of what Sweet Baby Inc. does by Twitterman X user 8-Bit Closed Fist. He says, "Wokeness is killing gaming." Here we go. I have avoided the conversation around Sweet Baby Inc. for so long, but now it's getting out of hand. Basically, when a game is being made, some people will hire them to help them write a dialogue or character design of certain types of characters. And when they do that and they get rejected, they then go and whine and bitch to whomever will get them on their side to make the writing room agree with them. That is not creativity. That is not creative thought. That's not the creative process. That is mob tactics, pure and simple. And by mob, I mean organized crime, which is appropriate because racketeering is very much something that Sweet Baby has done. Spoiler alert, it usually involves stories and characters that isn't the default. He continued, "Now anti-woke people call it one of this and they flock to it like flies on a turd. They'll tell you they're the reason Kill the Justice League and Arkham Knight are bad games. They'll say they are the reason why Spider-Man is dating a deaf woman, why Joel lost in golf, oh boy, why Joel lost in golf. Oh, Last of Us fans, I don't feel bad for you in the slightest. And why they can't edge to their favorite characters, and it all sounds ridiculous because from the bottom of my heart, it is. But they won't mention that they worked on games like God of War Ragnarok, Alan Wake 2. They won't tell you precisely what they worked on. That's another funny thing. You're going to put it on your website, but you won't specifically say what you worked on. And when people put a spotlight on it, you're immediately offended. Why? If you're so proud of it, aren't you wearing it as a badge of honor? Shouldn't you be going to everybody to be interviewed and say, well, this is what we worked on in the game? And you can't find what the details are in these cases. I mean, we have good ideas about what you worked on, but you won't give those. It's almost like you have skeletons in the closet instead of what you claim to be, which is 100% transparent. Now, I see nothing but skeletons in the closet. What pieces of dialogue did they add to what game and how? Because they don't know. It's not public knowledge. Some of the clowns are even going as far as to say they are the reason for the layoffs, which makes no sense. If you're still confused as to why something like this would exist, let me break it down to you. Let's say I'm a young black gamer who lives in Los Angeles. So I start a service to say, yo, if you come up with a character or a story that involves a young black gamer who lives in Los Angeles, you should talk to me about it because I kind of know what that's like. So someone's creating a movie and they say, yo, we have this character who's young, black gamer who lives in Los Angeles. Would he wear something like this in the winter? I can then look at the character and say, add a little bit more drip here, add some drip there. Enough, even though it's winter, we don't need a puff jacket, we're chilling. They say, all right, bet, move on. Second scenario, a show comes out. They say, yo, we got this character who's a young black gamer in Los Angeles. Would he say something like this? I say, we kind of over-pronunciate our R's a little bit more, so it wouldn't be brother, it would be brother. Now, those movies, those shows, they come out, some of them might still be trash. Some of them might still be hits, or might be hits, but I did my job. The rest is up to them. That's essentially what Sweet Baby Inc. does. That is now no way, shape, form, or fashion an issue with gaming, he asserted. Well, I would argue some of that is. Finally, he concluded, in fact, it helped us get more interesting, better characters, or else every character in the video game would still be Aiden Pierce from Watch Dogs or Old Boy from Days Gone. Sorry, that shit is boring. Well, that's because they made boring characters. Even some of the characters that you claim are just the regular norm, they also have the same problem that your characters have, Mary Kenney. They have exactly your problem. I want actual character development. That's the difference. Oh, and here's actually, so the video is actually enclosed in the article, so you guys can read it. After sharing this video, Kenney posted, it starts with, dev team has an idea. Maybe they already have an outline of their story and a core gameplay loop. Maybe they've got a whole script and a playable build. Either way, something is missing. Is it? Could be any number of things that you invent. A character feels underbaked. Maybe a whole faction. The backstory of a map has weak sauce world building, and no one on the team has time to do the research and brainstorming to make it cool. Hire somebody to do it. Not you. Why does it have to be you? I'm asking this question honestly. Why does it have to be you? Why does it have to be you, the sweet baby narrative consultative person? Why not bring in a new person and let them do it? I mean, we have numerous examples in the gaming industry of that happening. Blizzard Entertainment, for example, brought in a lowly janitor to answer some of these questions about the Warcraft universe. And then he became basically the lore master of all Warcraft. So why do we need to hire somebody like you? Just saying. Maybe the dev team has gotten a ton of notes from publishers plus execs on things that aren't working in the game. Well, and they're getting it from HR because you're probably complaining. Kenney went on, maybe the notes are all internal. The team knows something is wrong, but not how to identify it or fix it. Probably because of the weird double talk and backwards speak that people like Mary Kenney do. And so at that point, when they get that memo from the HR department, they're just as confused as the HR department, except the only difference is that they're not scared shitless like the HR department is because of the shit scary story that people like Mary Kenney tell them when people disagree with them. Kenney then shared, whenever you're in development and wherever the notes are coming from, the problem is the same. Something's wrong and the team can't figure out how to fix it. That's when you call sweet baby. Nope. I would never call sweet baby. I would sit in the writer's room with them and help them figure it out. I would gladly do it myself. If I was overseeing the project, I would gladly sit in the room myself than hire you. Even if that meant that I was getting more money than other people in that writing room. I'd find a way to be able to contribute to them instead of hiring you. Next, she posted, this next part is key because of some of you really seem confused. Narrative consultants do not get final say. Yes, you do. Do I need to put up the GDC keynote speech? Yes, you do. Because if you don't get final say, you will go to the marketing department. You will go to HR. You will go to the CEO as high as you can go and weave the shittiest, scariest story that you possibly can weave of their company going down in cinders because they didn't follow what you were saying. Yes, you want the final say. Should you get the final say? Absolutely fucking not. But yes, you get the final say. That's the way Sweet Baby works. And if you don't believe me, there's video proof of it on YouTube. It doesn't get into the game if we don't approve it. So wait, I love this. She literally contradicts herself in her own fucking tweet. They don't get the final say, huh? But it doesn't get into the game if they don't approve it. She literally contradicts herself in that one statement. We don't get final say, but if we don't want it in the game, if we don't approve of it in the game, it's not going in. That's people like Mary Kenney in a nutshell. Once again, boys and girls. They literally out themselves, they mask off themselves right in front of you, and you just have to see it. Kenney then stated they consult, they do research, pitch ideas, give feedback, and maybe even write scripts. I think you do all of those because you want to get paid regardless, but none of that gets into the game unless the core dev team agrees with it. Nope. Because if they don't agree with it, you will go and whine to whomever can change that. I'm going to keep saying that because it's key, and you're still wrong. Sweet Baby is not, nor is any consulting group coming into Rec Games. Yes, they are. They are helping smooth out plots and deepen characters. No, you're not. They ease the burden on the core narrative team. No, you don't. They are additive in every way. Absolutely not. You create problems and you make people ultimately lose their jobs. I will die on this fucking hill. You make people lose their jobs. They are not allowed to provide for their families if they don't subscribe to your train of thought. It's that simple. And if the dev team disagrees with them on something, the dev team doesn't take the note. And then you complain. We know how this rule book goes. It's really that simple, she wrote. Nah, it's really not. It's more simple the way I pointed it out. So no, Sweet Baby did not kill your game. Yes, they did. Of course, they had nothing to do with the layoffs. Yes, they did. They gave notes, pitches, advice, and research. And when it wasn't taken in, they immediately whined to whomever could change that. The studio made the final call, which ultimately, because of the shit story that they were weaving, maybe somebody like you wove, they had to ultimately side with you. Yeah, this 12-page thread is absolute trash in terms of arguments. She has contradicted herself so many freaking times, I can literally count them on both hands. It's walking contradiction left and right. All of this was a giant lie, as Sweet Baby Inc. CEO Kim Belair, thank you for admitting this, John, in 2019, that she and her company were opposed to diversifying a game with a Frenchman and advocated for a person of color character instead. During a presentation at the Game Developers Conference, she said, "I once worked on a project where they had an all-white cast where they expressed their desire. Okay, we need to mix it up a bit. How about this character's like stereotypically French? So they have a beret and they have like a striped shirt." And I was like, okay, if you need to do that, can we at least make them a person of color? And they said, oh no, that would be weird. They're already French. Oh, I almost want to see the person's face when they did that. They had to have been sarcastic in that, and she did not take it whatsoever. So I want to do better than this, she asserted. And I love the fact that you did this, John. Refers back to that GDC speech where Kim Belair outs this whole process. In the same presentation, Belair admitted the company does indeed work to censor games through sensitivity reading. She said, "We need sensitivity readers, we need risk assessment, and these are like, again, important services." I hate it when in keynote speeches disfluencies are used a lot. In interviews, it's fine, but in keynotes like this where the speech is literally prepared, it shouldn't be happening. Services that I literally list on every PDF that I send out and be like, hey, I can do risk assessment and sensitivity reading. And the silver bullet to Kenny's narrative is how Belair described working with video game developers in that GDC presentation. She said, if you're creative working in AAA, which I did for many years, put this stuff up to your higher ups. And if they don't see the value and what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, basically, she is saying, writer's room does not like what you have put up. So go above them instantly. When you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't give you what you want. Because they have to consider, I say that out loud as a joke, but it's actually very, very true, because if you start to consider the people who are player and audience facing, who are player and audience facing, and you have to deal with mitigating harm and with keeping the sentiment around their game and their project positive, there's like a genuine value that you can impress upon them both ethically and financially. You could say, this is important. For those who don't know, that is Mary Kenney's mask off moment. Belair then elaborates, it's also a valid discussion to have, because if you're working with a thin narrative budget and you work in AAA, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised or dismayed by the amount of money that marketing can give you. She just outed Sweet Baby's whole strategy, which, as we'll find out later, is straight up racketeering. Mary Kenney has an evil agenda, and she's willing to lie to spread it. I would agree. What do you make of Kenney wanting to pull all the levers to push the LGBTQ+ agenda? I like this article overall. The only complaints that I would have about this with John is, I get it, he's a Christian, he wanted to be able to bring Christian arguments into it. I think that there were some good quotes in there, but I don't necessarily 100% agree with all of that, but spot on in being able to showcase all of the problems in Mary Kenney's arguments. She literally contradicts herself so many times in this thread. I'm actually over my own hands, over 10, that she contradicts herself. And even to some extent, I would also say that 8-Bit Close Fist kind of contradicts some of his arguments, but that's me. Overall, yeah, and I wish it was over. I really do. I really wish after this we could hear that Mary Kenney was fired and Wolverine ultimately is going to be done, but, well, this is another time for a double dose of Mary Kenney, because we have another article brought to us by John F. Trent, at That Park Place. Sweet Baby Inc. defender who says every lever must be pulled to push LGBTQ+ agenda announced that she is leaving Marvel's Wolverine and joining CD Projekt Red. She apparently wants them period benefits. All right, John, let's get into this one. Mary Kenney, the former narrative director at Insomniac Games, who is working on Marvel's Wolverine, announced that she has joined CD Projekt Red. And to me, hey, CD Projekt fans, that's your death knell. That's when you know The Witcher ain't gonna be the same. Same thing with Cyberpunk, and same thing with anything else they're working on. Without further ado, it's time to announce my new job. Today was my first day as a senior writer at CD Projekt Red. So she's already senior writer, not just in the writing room, she's a senior writer, because we have to give those to feminists, right? We have to check that box. All right, cool. I can't wait to talk more about my project. I'm thrilled to be getting back into RPGs. She's working on The Witcher. I don't even need to think about it. She's working on an RPG? But what about Cyberpunk? Cyberpunk's done. I don't care what anybody says, it's done. She's on Witcher. And my team is talented, welcoming, and just flat out cool. Here's to a new adventure. Until they get interviewed a year later, and then we're gonna find out just how much of a bitch you were to them. I look forward to those interviews, by the way. They're gonna be great. Kenney recently detailed in an interview with DualShockers in May that everything must be done to push the LGBTQ+ agenda, reacting to a GLAAD report bemoaning the lack of those characters in video games, describing the report as heartbreaking. I'm gonna skip a lot of this just because it's stuff we've already gone over. Yes, so not only has Kenney made it abundantly clear that she will do everything in her power to push the LGBTQ+ agenda, she defended Sweet Baby Inc. after working with the consulting group on Marvel's Spider-Man 2. And there you go, there's the Sweet Baby involvement. I was wondering where that was going to be coming. And this kind of, the rest of this is going into the same 12-part thread that we already kind of went over. Things like that, as well as going into 8-Bit Closed Fist. So I'm gonna skip that. Give me a second. Gotta say, you've done extensive work here, John. I'm so happy that you did. And actually, yeah, even in this article, you go into Kim Belair. Thank you so much for doing that. But ultimately, yeah, you just kind of repeat all of your original points on this, going into 8-Bit Closed Fist, going into her personal thread, as well as bringing up Kim Belair and the things that she said at GDC. So not really a whole lot that we haven't already covered in the article, but what do you guys think, of Mary Kenney's statements, as well as the fact that she is now working for CD Projekt Red? I'm guaranteeing you it's on The Witcher. And from there on in, The Witcher will be just as dead as its Netflix counterpart. My thoughts on the matter is Mary Kenney is an absolute evil in the gaming industry that must be fired. She is the embodiment, as far as I'm concerned, of the Futurama joke of the tour guide that tells us how many degrees that she has, and one of them is a minor in Harlequin romance. She is exactly that, and we should not trust her with video games, we should not trust her with TV, we should not trust her with anime, we should not trust her with any of that shit, because she is not interested in making genuine, honest-to-God, real-life characters. She is interested in checking boxes and having hollow, soulless characters on the screen. So my viewpoint is that the quicker that Mary Kenney can get fired from the industry, or, when CD Projekt eventually just, closes its doors and Mary Kenney can't find a job, that'll be also a great day. But let me know what you guys think of Mary Kenney and also this double dose. I might actually start doing this a little bit more if I think the stories warrant it. So if you guys like it, make sure to leave a comment down below. Let's have that discussion on Mary Kenney and whether or not she should continue to be working in any creative industry whatsoever. My answer is obviously no. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like on it and consider subscribing on the YouTube channel, because you can check out all of the other minicasts that I've done, as well as some of the other content that I produce. And you can also send a nice middle finger to YouTube, to the YouTube overlords, and basically say that, yes, it's okay to have discussions like this. And it's okay to be able to talk about people like this working in the industry, and we don't necessarily agree with it, and we don't want to pay for those games anymore. That's the way that goes. And of course, I will see you guys next time for the next GNRO Minicast. Until then, take care, my friends.